We have this for any future folks that need to view it, or for the few of us that couldn't be here today. So happy Friday. This is the Central Services and Campus President's Code of Conduct and Ethics and Compliance training. And just a couple of quick announcements. We are recording today, and if you can keep your cameras on so we can see each other, we'd appreciate that. Good to see everybody. As far as attendance, I'm just going to do a screen capture down the right-hand side here. So if anybody doesn't have your name or your camera on, please just send a little message in the chat button that you're here, okay, so that we can record that for attendance. And today's training is about the new Code of Conduct and Compliance certification that we'll be launching. And every employee will be signing a code of conduct that's related to their job category and a compliance certification that they acknowledge and comply with that particular area. Sharon's going to talk about details, but today's training is to train you on the process and the particular documents. It's not a forum where we would report any areas of misconduct or compliance. You would need to report those directly to me, or if it involved a member of the leadership team, you would report that to Mike Callan, who is our general counsel, and his email and phone number are listed in the documents. And just so everybody knows, the leadership team is comprised of Annette Howard, Chad Callan, Sharon Rhodes, Jana Warren, George McClusack, Jim Paparella, Ali Rochelle, Parker Rhodes, and myself. So again, if the concern was about any of us, you would report those directly to our general counsel. Sharon, I'm going to turn things over to you for the training portion. And I just unmuted you.
Okay. Okay, sorry. I think I reversed it when you unmuted. I was clicking in. Okay. It says I'm muted. Am I still muted? Okay. Can everybody hear me? Yes, okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody for being here today. Actually, I want to diverge before I even start. I think Courtney Martin has been on every one of these, haven't you? So I'm going to start off by saying, I'm sorry, Courtney, you have to listen to this. I mean, you didn't have to, but I really appreciate your desire to learn all you can about ethics and compliance and make sure you know about it in every department. And that's really telling. So thank you for doing that. And I think a few others of you might have been on another one here or there, but at this level, really, of operations, most of what I'm going to go over is going to be really familiar to you, because we're all leaders in some way within particular departments or over certain functions within our organization. So all of this is going to be pretty familiar to you. Some of you have also been with us a very long time, so you've heard this before, maybe in a little different format, but many of these same principles that I'm going to go over with you, you've heard many, many, many times before. So when we talk about ethics and compliance, we're really talking about the cornerstone of our organization. We take it very seriously. Our organization is built upon it. It is the cornerstone of our operations. There's a couple of examples I can give you that support that statement. First, when you were hired and you signed your employment agreement, we have an attachment to the employment agreement called Standards of Ethical Conduct and Legal Compliance Obligation. So you were, of course, required to read that, to sign off on that, and that, of course, reflects our commitment to always remaining ethical and compliant in everything we do across the board. A second reflection of the fact that this has always been a principle of ours is if you go back in time, even to the inception of our organization in 1958, you would see that one of the guiding principles, the number one guiding principle in if you read it in our catalogs, in any of our governing documents, it is that we will at all times conduct ourselves ethically and in compliance with all laws, rules, and regulations. It's been there from the very beginning, and it has been a central focus of ours ever since. And to that point, everything we do as an organization, any policy that we write, any procedure that we write, any decision that we make around the table, how shall we do this, how shall we do that? Those decisions are always made in the context of what do we have to do to be compliant. We always want to be compliant. We want to be, in many cases, people in other organizations that come in and get to know us often tell us, wow, you guys are really, really conservative, because we don't like to even get close to when a regulation is written or a law is handed down. We don't even like, if there's a gray area, we don't even want to get into that gray area. We always want to stay confidently compliant at all times. So with that in mind, I think that we need to go now and talk a little bit about the difference between compliance and ethics. And let's start with compliance, because compliance is very black and white. It's very black and white. There's not a lot of gray. In fact, there's really, within our organization, virtually no gray when it comes to compliance. And compliance is easier to understand because of the structure of it. For example, if a law is passed, or a rule is passed, or a regulation is passed, or we have a accreditation standard of some type, when that comes down to us, when we receive that, it is typically written in a very checklist type fashion. Simple example, one of our accreditation standards is that we have to have a college transcript on every student. And then within that college transcript, it tells us what needs to be on the face of that transcript, etc., that type of thing. So it says you shall have a college transcript. This information shall be on this college transcript. You should have the college transcript made available to the student at these points, by these points in time. Very easy to read, understand, write a policy on, implement best practices, and ultimately, therefore, comply. Boom, 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 boom. Any law, rule, or regulation is going to be able to be dealt with in that way. In addition to that, not only are we very careful about writing our policies and our procedures to comply with those regulations, but we do something above and beyond that, which is we have, as most of you know, internal auditors, internal audit teams, internal audit people, processes where we go back in and we check our records and audit them for compliance. That's a huge part of who we are as an organization. It is something we do voluntarily. It's not something that's required. And it is something that, again, illustrates how committed we are to remaining compliant all the time. So when those audits or reviews are being done, we don't want you to be afraid of them, obviously, and I know none of you are, of course, but they're done with the intent of making us better. And if we find something that needs improved or corrected, we want to be doing that proactively so that we are always 100% compliant. So that's really the issue of compliance. Now let's talk about the issue of ethics. And if any of you have had an ethics course, which I would imagine many of you have, you will realize that ethics is not so black and white, because what might seem ethical to one person may not be ethical at all may not, based on their own principles, may not be ethical at all. And so the question becomes, who's right, who's wrong? Is there a right? Is there a wrong? Well, let's start with the definition. The definition of ethics is moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. So that's the definition in the dictionary. The operative words there are moral principles. And this is where you can get into debate and discussion over issues as to whether is it ethical if I do this or not ethical if I do this? And let's use one that's just easy to understand, which is the issue of abortion. So if your moral principles tell you that this baby is inside the mother is a human being, then you're going to be morally opposed to abortion, and having that happen is going to be something that you would deem not ethical at all. If you feel that baby is not a life until it's born outside the mother, then you're going to think that based on your moral principles, that there's nothing wrong with abortion. Now, by extension, so therefore, right there is already a conflict. What is ethical in your mind might not be ethical in another person's mind, and vice versa. But let's take it one step further. If the byproducts of abortion is stems, there are byproducts, and stem cells are the ones most commonly talked about, but there are also baby parts that result from aborted fetuses, and these stem cells and these baby parts are sold for research purposes, for scientific medical research purposes. So you might more than likely, you're going to take the position, if you're opposed to abortion because you believe it's morally wrong, you're going to be opposed to the use of those byproducts in that manner because they were acquired in an unethical, immoral way, and vice versa. So you can see how it's not as black and white as compliance is. So what are we asking you? We know each of you have your own defined moral compass. You are going to have your own, based on that, you're going to have your own standard of ethics. And we ask that whatever those standards of ethics are, that you're conducting the performance of your job in accordance with those ethical standards. Of course, there is one exception, and that in terms of if there were ever to be a problem with your ethics versus whether we're complying with a law, rule, or regulation, well, the compliance with the law, rule, and regulation would take precedent, of course, because we cannot violate a law, we cannot violate a rule, we cannot violate a regulation. It's just part of the education that we deliver and the governing documents. So let me go into now sort of a list of do's and don'ts. And again, these are all going to probably be really, really familiar to you because of the positions that you hold, the leadership positions that you hold, and the fact that most of you are involved in multiple areas of responsibility within the organization. So I guess you could say it goes without saying, but nevertheless needs to be mentioned that no matter what we are doing, each and every day with whom we are working, whether it be a student, a parent, the general public, an employer, a community organization, etc. We always want to be truthful and accurate in our communications with those individuals. And so what that means is, obviously, many of us, I look across this screen and I know that all of you are in work with a lot of different audiences, and you're going to get a lot of different questions from whomever you might be speaking with at any given time. And if there is a question that comes up that you just don't know the answer to, what we want you to do is not give them an answer. We don't want you to guess. We don't want you to give a partial answer. Rather, what we want you to do is find the person that can give you the correct answer and refer that individual to that person. Or find that person, of course, and you can go over it with them and then bring the information back to the individual that you were speaking with. So in essence, what I'm saying is, don't feel like you have to answer every question on the spot, or you have to provide information that you're not sure is complete because you feel pressure to have to respond at that moment. We'd rather you defer your response, get the information, the correct information, and bring it back, rather than give a wrong answer. Obviously, for those of you who are not part of the financial aid team, you should not be giving financial aid advice. If students, parents, again, anybody asks you questions about anything in the Title IV world, the scholarship world, just anything having to do with financing their education with us, always, without exception, refer them to the financial aid department. Don't try to answer those questions, even if you think you know that answer. That's really also been a pretty strong principle of ours, because it is a law that we have to adhere to, that we have from the very start. And similar to what I just said, don't try to give answers in any area that you're not familiar with. That could apply to an academic question, an admissions question, a career services question. If you're not working in those areas and you haven't been trained in that material, don't guess, don't try to give them an answer, just refer them to the people in those, the individual or individuals in that department that are responsible for that information. Also, on a related note, when it comes to institutional policies, things like transfer credit, refund policy, articulation agreements, just anything that you would find in our catalog, because our catalog basically is just full of policies and procedures. When a student asks about those, or anybody asks about those, rather than paraphrasing the policy, we would ask that you refer them to the catalog and have them read the policy and or procedure, rather than you trying to summarize it or paraphrase it in some way. And the reason for that is obvious. I think that you might miss something, or again, you might give something, give some information that's incomplete. You might forget something. And in some cases, when we are bound, when a regulation comes to us or an accreditation standard is passed and it comes to us, in some cases, those regulations or standards have very specific language we have to use to describe certain things in our policy. Sometimes it says you shall make this statement in your policy, or you shall describe this in this way. And of course, we incorporate that into our policies that are then published in our catalogs. And if you're just summarizing for them and they don't have the complete information, then they're not getting that part of it either. So, and frankly, to be honest with you, I'm a part of the writing of these policies and have been for years, and I still go back when somebody asks me, what's your transfer credit policy with regard to CLEP credits? Well, I mean, I wrote that a while back, so I always pull it out, show it to them, have them read it, and then answer questions if necessary. Another absolute prohibition is to never, never, ever guarantee a student a job, or guarantee that they will get a job, or guarantee they will get a job at any particular location, or that they will make any particular level of wage or salary. That is, again, an absolute prohibition for obvious reasons. We can't promise anybody anything like that because it's up to them, really. We just provide assistance. Do not ever quote a statistic like a job placement, retention, anything, graduation. Rather, what we want you to do in that case is refer all of that, all of those questions to the website. Everything that we are required to do as an institution in the producing of statistics and the publishing of those statistics is on our website. And in doing that, we follow the exact regulation that gives rise to us, to the requirement that we publish that. So there's usually a very specific formula. There's obviously very specific data inputs to the formula so that the rates are published in accordance with the regulation. We don't make up our own. It's all governed by regulation. So in that area, with regard to that, always refer them to the website. I'm sure all of you on this screen are very familiar with our website, and in the upper left-hand corner of the homepage, there's a link that says consumer information. And as a side note, I know we've done a really good job on that, because Jana tells me that when we go through, and I might misspeak here about, not in a bad way, just I don't know exactly how it works, but somehow we get audited every year, and one of the in our financial, something about the regions come in and take a look at when we have to get recertified. They take a look at our website to make sure we're compliant, and we have been commended on having one of the best consumer information disclosures of any institutions that those regions have reviewed. So that's that's really nice to hear. So we know we're not only doing it right, but I believe they've even said we go above and beyond. So you can have confidence that everything that's on there is accurate, is correct, and is compliant. Anytime that you all are completing documents, reports, applications, anything like that on behalf of the institution, again, we ask you to be obviously accurate. And so if there are unknowns or things that you're not sure about, don't guess. Rather, seek out the individual that can help you determine with certainty the answers that you might have to questions that you might not be sure about. Also, be sure all of our records, documents, everything that we do as an institution are stored safely and are accessible. Everything that I just went over, I think pretty much everybody on this screen supervises someone else or some group of other people or some individual, even it could be a singular individual. It is your responsibility as a supervisor to ensure that anyone you supervise also are adhering to our codes of conduct or their codes of conduct, because each position has its own code of conduct, that they're adhering to their codes of conduct, they're following the policies and procedures. So everything that I'm saying today also applies to those that you supervise, and it would be your responsibility to ensure that that is also being done at that level. If you come up with if you identify any non-compliances or anything that is a concern of an ethical nature, you need to immediately address it and rectify it. And Scott will get into that a little bit more in a minute. And that's it for me. Does anybody have any questions for me before I kick it back to Scott? Well, certainly, you know, I'm always here. As you go through your certification document, if there's any questions, feel free to call me. But the certification document and the code of ethics, they pretty much align. So, well, they do. They align completely. So what I've gone over with you here is basically what you're going to certify to on the document. Scott?
All right, thank you very much, Sharon. I just want to quickly cover the process for the signing of these documents. Today is our last Code of Conduct training session. We've been doing them for the past week, and it will be recorded so that anybody who couldn't be here today will be able to view it before they sign their documents. The process moving forward will be that any new employee will watch the video that is related to their particular job category that we have recorded, and they will also receive and sign the Code of Conduct for their particular job category. Once a year, during our annual performance reviews, employees will then all sign the certification of compliance after they've reviewed the Code of Conduct again. Okay, so this time around, everybody is signing one Code of Conduct and one certification. Next year, you'll only be signing the certification, but new employees will sign the Code of Conduct when they start and the certification at their annual review after they've watched the video, of course, when they start. Through next week, we're going to give you time to review these documents, ask any questions. I think you all know how to get a hold of Sharon. You all know how to get a hold of me. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions about the Code of Conduct and the certification. We would like to have all these signed and returned with a deadline of January 29th, which is the last Friday of the month. Campus presidents, I've already sent out the instructions to you on how to compile those and submit them. Leadership team, just submit your documents to me. You can get them to me next week or scan them to me, whichever is more convenient, and I will collect those. Loan services team, you're going to submit those to Janet or Sarah. You guys tell me which one. Janet? Okay. All right, you will submit those to Janet. The IDT team, you'll submit those through the Morgantown campus. Sam will be doing all of those electronically through Adobe Sign. So if you haven't already received the email, you'll be getting an email to sign it in Adobe. And marketing team, just you can print and sign yours and give them to Jim, and he'll turn them in. Okay. So that's the process. We need those all back by January 29th. And just in conclusion, you know, there's a lot of people on this team that have been here for a long time and understand how committed we are to compliance and ethics. That's why we are so good at what we do, because we do the right thing all the time. And it's important that we are able to trust you and, of course, trust everyone on our teams, because none of us can be everywhere all the time and listen to everything that everybody ever says or does. So I'm just reminded, as our founder looks over my shoulder here, I always ask myself, what would Mr. Callan do? And you can always put that into perspective by saying that ethical behavior is doing the right thing even when nobody else is watching. Okay, so we trust that you all will do the right thing, and we know that you will, because that's how we live as an organization. Sharon, anything else?
Nope, I think we've covered it all.
All right, thank you all very much. Have a wonderful weekend, and hopefully we'll all talk again in person soon.
Thank you.
It was
Take
so
care.
I was so happy to see everybody.
Good to see you. Good to see you too, Sarah.
I hope you guys have a great day.
Yay.
You too.
You
Bye-bye,
too.
everybody.